Have you ever felt the quiet burden of carrying something that was never yours to begin with? Perhaps it came in the form of a subtle request, an urgent favor, a gentle plea for help, or an unspoken expectation passed down through years of guilt and habit. You didn't sign up for it, but somehow you became the rescuer, the bank, the referee, the emotional cushion. And over time, the boundary between your life and theirs blurred until you no longer knew where they ended and you began. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." And perhaps that's what's happening now. Not fate, but a lifetime of silent conditioning that taught you to say yes when your soul whispered no. Have you ever felt the quiet burden of carrying something that was never yours to begin with? Perhaps it came in the form of a subtle request, an urgent favor, a gentle plea for help, or an unspoken expectation passed down through years of guilt and habit. You didn't sign up for it, but somehow you became the rescuer, the bank, the referee, the emotional cushion. And over time, the boundary between your life and theirs blurred until you no longer knew where they ended and you began. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." And perhaps that's what's happening now. Not fate, but a lifetime of silent conditioning that taught you to say yes when your soul whispered no. Imagine a life where no is not an act of selfishness, but a declaration of self-respect, where you can sip your morning coffee without dreading the next phone call, where your peace is protected, not because others give it to you, but because you finally understand you were never meant to carry what wasn't yours. This isn't about abandoning those you love. It's about awakening. The kind of awakening Jung spoke of, the individuation process, a journey inward where you discover who you are apart from the roles you've been assigned. Parent, sibling, friend, provider. Yes, you've worn many hats. But beneath them all is the self, the eternal center, that longs to live, breathe, and be whole again. In this video, we're going to uncover 5 things no one has the right to ask of you, especially now. Not because you're bitter, but because you're becoming conscious. And with consciousness comes clarity. And with clarity comes choice. So if you've ever felt drained by demands that feel more like debts, if you're ready to draw a line, not in anger, but in awareness, stay with us. Because this might not just open your eyes. It might finally set you free. There's a particular kind of exhaustion that sleep can't fix. It's not the fatigue of the body, but the burden of the soul, when you've been carrying responsibilities, emotions, and problems that were never yours to begin with. It starts subtly, almost innocently. A friend asks for a favor. A sibling leans on you. A grown child needs help, just this once. You say yes, and again, and again. Until one day you wake up and realize your life no longer feels like your own. Carl Jung wrote, "People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own souls." And perhaps this is the truth at the heart of your fatigue. You are surrounded by people who refuse to face themselves, and instead they place their shadows onto you. Their fears become your responsibilities. Their chaos, your problem. Their failure to act becomes your guilt. But here's what's rarely said: you are not responsible for what others refuse to carry. Yet too often those with open hearts become emotional repositories for the unconscious burdens of others. In Jungian terms, this is the dynamic of projection. Others unconsciously cast parts of themselves, fears, helplessness, neediness, onto you. And unless you are aware, you will mistake their projections for your duties. Let's break the illusion. Helping someone once is compassion. Being the emotional scaffolding of their life is self-betrayal. When you constantly clean up messes you didn't make, when your peace is routinely sacrificed to keep others afloat, you are not being noble. You are being drained. And the worst part is over time, you forget how it started. You begin to believe this is just the way things are. That being tired is part of being strong. That saying no is a form of betrayal. But what if saying yes over and over again is the real betrayal of your inner self? In Jung's framework, this moment is an invitation to individuate, to become whole by recognizing what is you and what is not, to see the boundary where your responsibility ends and someone else's begins. When you fail to make that distinction, you're not just overextending yourself. You're robbing the other person of the opportunity to grow. You're protecting them from their consequences, and in doing so, you shield them from the very suffering that might wake them up. So let's be honest. When you keep saying yes to what you shouldn't, you're not just carrying a load. You're interfering with fate. Think of your life like a river. It has a current, a direction, a natural flow. Every time you take on something that doesn't belong to you, you place a stone in that stream, a small one at first, then another, and another, until the river is dammed stagnant and heavy with obligation. The water no longer flows freely, and neither do you. You were meant to live from your center knot as a reaction to the chaos around you. And when you finally dare to set the burden down, something extraordinary happens. The guilt fades. The tension softens. Your own voice begins to return. You hear it say, "This is not mine to carry. I can love them without losing myself." Because love without boundaries is not love. It's collapse. Jung taught that each of us must walk the path of the self, and no one, not even those we love most, should walk it for us, nor should we walk theirs. When you protect your inner peace, you are not being selfish. You are being wise. And this is the psychological crossroads where many find themselves either continue carrying the emotional debts of others or step back and finally live from within. This isn't an easy decision. You might be called cold, uncaring, selfish. But remember, those who benefited from your self-abandonment will always be the loudest when you reclaim yourself. Let their noise be the sign that you're doing something right. Because in the silence that follows, you'll rediscover a truth long buried, that your worth was never tied to how much you could carry for others. Your life, your time, your energy, your peace is sacred. And the moment you decide to protect it is the moment your true healing begins. So ask yourself now, whose weight are you still carrying? And more importantly, why? Because the minute you realize you don't need to, you'll finally feel what it means to be free. There are debts heavier than dollars. Sometimes what gets borrowed isn't cash, it's peace of mind. Imagine this. You're sitting quietly, perhaps enjoying a quiet morning or an evening to yourself when your phone buzzes. A familiar name lights up the screen. It could be a sibling, a grown child, an old friend. And somewhere beneath the pleasantries and catch-up chatter, you already sense it. They're not calling just to say hello. They're calling for help. Again. But it's never framed that way. It's just a small loan only this once, it'll pay you back next week. You've heard these phrases before, and each time you've tried to believe them. Carl Jung often spoke of the collective unconscious, the shared psychological patterns we all carry beneath our awareness. And in this moment, one of those patterns rises quietly, the archetype of the caregiver, the protector, the provider. For many of us, especially in our later years, this archetype becomes a well-worn identity. We've spent decades nurturing others, solving problems, giving without keeping score. But here's the shadow side of that archetype. It can be manipulated. What starts as generosity often morphs into obligation. And what feels like compassion turns into control, not yours over them, but theirs over you. Because lending money doesn't just exchange currency, it transfers power. You lend, and whether you realize it or not, a silent contract is written. You're now emotionally entangled in someone else's life choices. You begin checking your phone more often. You wonder when they'll repay you. You feel awkward bringing it up, but it festers in the background. You become less free. And here's the cruel twist: when the repayment doesn't come, not just the money, but the respect, the communication, the gratitude, you are left not only poorer, but disillusioned. You didn't just lose money. You lost trust. You lost a piece of the relationship. You may have even lost a part of your own self-respect. Jung taught us that what is repressed always returns, often in distorted ways. When we repress our discomfort about lending, our resentment grows quietly in the unconscious. It surfaces later as tension, illness, or even estrangement. This is how unspoken sacrifices become emotional poison. So let's ask the hard question: why do we keep doing it? Often it's guilt, or fear of seeming selfish, or a subconscious belief that we must keep proving our love by giving. But let me be clear, love does not require self-sacrifice to the point of self-erasure. True love includes boundaries. And lending money without clarity or consent to your own soul is not love, it's unconscious compliance. We must recognize that each act of giving should come from strength, not obligation. If giving leaves you feeling depleted, anxious, or manipulated, then it's not generosity, it's spiritual overextension. And perhaps the deeper Jungian truth is, this people ask for money not just because they need it, but because they sense you don't know how to say no. The energy of unspoken people-pleasing draws in those who are unconsciously seeking someone to carry their burden. In Jungian psychology, this is called enmeshmenta, blurred boundary, where two psyches bleed into each other, creating confusion, guilt, and over-responsibility. It's not your job to rescue others from the consequences of their own choices. Here's a symbolic truth worth remembering: the open hand that always gives eventually becomes the hand that is taken for granted. This isn't about becoming hard-hearted. It's about becoming whole. You can love deeply and still say no. You can care without being a savior. You can set financial boundaries and still be a source of wisdom, strength, and support. Jung believed that individuation, the process of becoming who you truly are, requires withdrawing from roles that no longer serve your soul. That includes the silent role of being everyone's financial safety net. So next time the request comes, pause, breathe, and ask yourself, does this request honor my boundaries? Will this act serve their growth or enable their avoidance? Am I giving freely, or am I afraid of how they'll see me if I say no? These are not easy questions, but they are essential ones, because every dollar you lend out of guilt is a dollar stolen from your own freedom. Every agreement made in silence is a loud compromise with your own truth. Your later years are not a time to become someone's ATM. They are a time to embody the wisdom you've earned, to model discernment, and to protect your inner peace as the treasure it truly is. This isn't selfishness, it's self-respect. And once you reclaim that, you'll never again pay the price for someone else's patterns. There is a hidden burden many carry, often without words, often without thanks. It's the role of the unwelcome peacemaker, the reluctant referee, the person caught between two sides of a war they never started. Carl Jung once said, "The greatest burden a child must bear is the unlived life of the parents." But this truth doesn't just apply to childhood. It echoes through every family system, especially when you're older and everyone looks to you to fix what they refuse to face themselves. Let's paint the picture. Your phone rings. It's your daughter. She's crying again about your son. They're not speaking. Someone said something. Holidays are ruined. The air is thick with resentment. And just like that, she puts it on you. Can't you talk to him? You're the only one he listens to. Suddenly you're not just a parent. You're a therapist, a diplomat, a vault for secrets and grievances that aren't even yours. You didn't choose this, but now it's at your feet, and you're expected to clean it up. This is not love. This is triangulation. In Jungian psychology, triangulation is when two people in conflict pull in a third party to absorb the emotional tension they refuse to confront themselves. It's not just unhealthy, it's dangerous. Because the person in the middle, you becomes the scapegoat, not the hero. You're the one who gets blamed no matter what you say or how gently you say it. Let's go deeper. What happens when you enter that battlefield? You offer wisdom. You plead for empathy. You try to be fair, but nothing changes. The fire rages on, and now you're burned too. You go to sleep with tension in your chest. You replay conversations in your mind. You wonder if you said too much or not enough. You ask yourself if peace is even possible anymore. This is psychic erosion. Your energy, your essence begins to fray not because you're weak, but because you were never meant to carry the emotional wounds of others. Jung taught that healing must come from within. You cannot impose individuation on another person. You cannot force someone to grow who isn't ready to see themselves. And that includes your own children. It's hard, isn't it? You love them more than life itself. You raised them. You wiped their tears. You gave them your time, your money, your energy. So when they hurt, you want to help. But here's the painful truth. You cannot sacrifice your peace to fix problems rooted in someone else's psyche. You didn't cause this, and you cannot cure it. In fact, the more you step in, the more you rob them of the lesson. And make no mistake, there is a lesson here. Whether it's learning how to forgive, how to take responsibility, or how to set boundaries, they must walk that road on their own. You cannot do it for them, even if you love them. Especially if you love them, because real love honors autonomy. So what do you do when they beg you to mediate? You draw a sacred line, not from anger, but from wisdom, not from coldness, but from self-respect. You say, "I love you both, but this is between you. I will not pick sides. I will not be the bridge or the battleground." And when guilt whispers in your ear, because it will, you remind yourself, I am not responsible for the emotional maturity of others. This is a radical act of individuation, the ultimate Jungian step toward inner wholeness. You no longer betray yourself to make others feel comfortable. You no longer bleed emotionally to keep the peace. Because that kind of peace is a lie, and you've lived long enough to know you deserve better. Let them call you cold. Let them accuse you of not caring. You and I both know the truth. Your love has always been deeper than words. But love without boundaries becomes sacrifice, and too much sacrifice becomes self-destruction. This isn't just about family drama. It's about your soul's integrity. You are not here to be the container for everyone else's chaos. You are here to live, to rest, to reflect, to enjoy what you've built, to preserve the sacred space within you that is quiet, whole, and undisturbed. If they truly respect you, they will eventually understand. And if they don't, well, that too is a lesson. Not for you, for them. You've done your part. Now it's time to protect what Jung called your inner sanctuary, that place of truth that belongs only to you. Because the moment you stop stepping into battles that aren't yours is the moment you truly reclaim your peace. There comes a time in every life when you're no longer trying to become, you simply are. You've walked through the fires of youth, endured the storms of middle age, and now stand in the clear air of wisdom. But just when you think you've earned the right to live freely, someone tells you to change. Don't dress like that. Stop saying those things. You're too old for this. You should act your age. It sounds harmless, maybe even helpful. But beneath those words lies a deep, unspoken message. Who you are is no longer enough. Carl Jung warned us that the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. But what happens when the world asks you to trade that privilege for approval? Let's be honest. In a youth-obsessed culture, aging is often treated like a problem to be fixed, not a journey to be honored. People see gray hair, slower steps, quieter evenings, and they assume you're fading. But that's projection. It's their fear of mortality, speaking not a reflection of your worth. And so they ask you to change, to shrink, to blend in, to be less so they can feel more comfortable. This isn't guidance, it's erasure. What they're asking is not an update, it's an identity deletion. You may have noticed it in subtle ways. The discomfort when you speak your mind at family dinners, the awkward silence when you mention your favorite music or talk about your past with fire in your voice. It's as if they want the safe version of you, the agreeable one, the silent one, the one who fits neatly into the box of elder without complexity or contradiction. But here's the truth: you are not a relic. You are a soul in motion. Jung believed that the second half of life is not a decline, it's a deepening. In this stage, your task is not to fit into someone else's mold. Your task is to integrate every part of yourself, the rebel, the dreamer, the nurturer, the seeker. This is the individuation process. And it does not come with an expiration date. So what do you do when others ask you to change? You pause, you breathe, and you ask yourself, is this request a path to wholeness or a shortcut to conformity? If it's the latter, you say no, not with anger, but with certainty. Because no one has the right to dictate your soul's expression. You've earned your laugh lines, your quirks, your rituals. If you love classical music, let it echo through your home. If your stories start with "back in the day," let them. You are not outdated. You are a living archive of truth. And make no mistake, your essence is needed. The younger generations may not realize it now, but your authenticity gives them permission to become whole themselves. By standing in your truth, you become a beacon, not just for yourself, but for them too. Jung often spoke of masks, the personas we wear to fit into society. But the danger comes when we forget to take the mask off, when we mistake the mask for the face. Don't let anyone convince you that your mask is more lovable than your soul. This is not about being inflexible. Growth is vital. But bending who you are to meet someone else's discomfort, that is spiritual self-abandonment. And here's the most haunting truth of all. If you say yes to enough of these requests, you'll look in the mirror one day and not recognize yourself. You'll wonder where your joy went, where your curiosity disappeared. You'll mourn not a person, but a version of yourself that you were pressured to bury. Don't let it come to that. You've lived long enough to know what matters. You've earned the right to be fully, unapologetically you. Whether that means dressing the way you like, dancing to your favorite songs, or sitting in silence while others rush do it your way. Let them call you stubborn. Let them misunderstand, because what they call stubbornness is actually self-possession, and what they call outdated may be the very wisdom they one day seek. This chapter of life is not about fitting in. It's about shining. And if someone tries to dim your light, not out of concern, but out of fear, remember this. You are not here to be edited. You are here to be experienced. There's a silent burden many carry as they grow older, the burden of emotional compliance. Not because they want to, but because others expect it. Your children, your siblings, longtime friends. They may not say it directly, but their requests echo loudly in your spirit. Just go along with it. Don't make waves. We'd feel better if you didn't do that. Don't make us uncomfortable. And so you do what you've done for decades. You accommodate. You shrink your needs. You silence your thoughts. You suppress your joy. But deep inside, a quiet voice begins to whisper, "When did my life stop being mine?" Carl Jung spoke often of the shadow, the parts of ourselves that we disown and project onto others. When someone demands that you prioritize their emotions over your own, they are not loving you. They are projecting their own insecurity, their own fear of control, their own unintegrated self onto you. They are saying, "I don't want to face my discomfort, so I need you to make it go away from me." But here's the truth. You are not responsible for another adult's emotional regulation, and yet we've been conditioned to think that denying ourselves for the sake of keeping the peace is noble, that martyrdom is a virtue. But Jung would argue otherwise. Self-denial when used to appease others is not virtue. It's avoidance, it's suppression, and most tragically, it's a betrayal of the self. Let's examine the subtle violence in this emotional dynamic. Imagine this. You decide to take a trip, make a new choice, speak a long silenced truth, and suddenly someone close to you reacts, not with curiosity, but with guilt-laced language. "Why would you do that to us? Don't you care how that makes me feel?" The focus is no longer on your growth, it's on their comfort. But you've lived too long to keep playing emotional hostage to someone else's fragility. You've earned your liberation, and anyone who truly loves you will celebrate that, not resist it. There's a term in Jungian psychology called individuation, the process of becoming your whole authentic self. It is not selfish. It is sacred, and part of that journey means claiming the right to your own emotional truth, even when it's inconvenient for others. It means saying, "I understand that you're upset, but I'm not here to manage your emotions. I care about you, but I will not erase myself for your comfort. Your peace is your responsibility. Mine is mine." This doesn't mean we stop being compassionate, but true compassion has boundaries. It honors both self and other. Anything less becomes codependency disguised as love. And love without boundaries is not love, it's entrapment. So what happens when you continually put others first? Emotionally, you become invisible. Your preferences fade. Your dreams grow quiet. Your passions dim. And slowly, the architecture of who you are starts to collapse. You smile, but it feels forced. You agree, but feel hollow. You show up, but you are no longer present. That is the cost of emotional enmeshment. That is what happens when we allow guilt to be our compass. But guilt is not a guide, it's a ghost. And it will haunt you as long as you let it. Here's what Jung would suggest: bring the shadow to light. Examine why you feel obligated. Ask yourself, is this love or fear of rejection? Am I giving or performing? Am I alive or just compliant? Because life is not meant to be an endless act of self-cancellation. It's meant to be lived in alignment with your soul, and the soul does not thrive in captivity. So, when someone says, "Put me first," ask, at what cost? If the cost is your well-being, your peace, or your truth, the answer must be no. Protecting your peace is not selfish. It's spiritual hygiene. You are not a mirror designed to reflect someone else's ideal version of you. You are a flame, and if your fire unsettles them, perhaps they've spent too long in the dark. Let them adjust. You are allowed to be the main character in your story, especially now, especially after all the chapters you've endured to get here. And if you've forgotten that you don't need permission to reclaim it, you only need to remember this. Your emotions matter. Your needs matter. You matter. This is your sacred boundary. Let no one cross it, not even in the name of love. There comes a moment in every life when the quiet erosion of identity becomes visible. It doesn't happen in a single dramatic act. It happens gradually, through subtle comments, raised eyebrows, dismissive tones, through pressure masked as concern, through suggestions wrapped in the illusion of love. Don't wear that. You're too old to say things like that. Why do you still listen to that kind of music? You should stop talking about the past so much. But the message beneath these words is unmistakable. You as you are make me uncomfortable. Please, become someone else. Carl Jung taught that authenticity is the path to wholeness, and any attempt to suppress it, even to make others happy, is a rejection of the self. And what is the self, if not the unique flame that has burned within you since birth? Your preferences, your humor, your mustn't-see. To be asked to dim that light in order to conform is not a favor. It's a slow form of spiritual exile. Jung would have called this false adaptation, when the persona we show the world is no longer in service of authenticity, but becomes a mask worn to gain acceptance in environments where the real self is unwelcome. But the longer the mask is worn, the harder it becomes to remove. And here's the cost. One day, you look in the mirror and barely recognize yourself. Your voice feels unfamiliar. Your joy feels artificial. Your life feels like a stage play written by someone else. And for what? So others can avoid the discomfort of confronting your independence, your age, your confidence. What they're really asking, whether they realize it or not, is for you to abandon your individuation, to sever the sacred thread that connects your inner truth to your outer life. But the psyche cannot thrive in exile. You see, when someone tells you, stop being so traditional, or let go of your old habits, they may think they're being helpful, but often they are confronting their own fear of aging, their own disconnection from meaning, and projecting it onto you. Jung believed that projection is the most common psychological mechanism of avoidance. People who are uncomfortable with their own lives will often seek to reshape yours because it's easier to remodel someone else than to renovate yourself. So when your children, your peers, or even society ask you to change what makes you, pause and ask, is this about my evolution or their avoidance? Is this an invitation to grow or a demand to erase? Is this love or control dressed as concern? You are not too old to enjoy what brings you joy. You are not outdated. You are not a relic. You are the embodiment of decades of experience, lessons, love, pain, wisdom, and strength. And all of that deserves reverence, not revision. Jung urged us to integrate, not eliminate the past, to see our former selves not as ghosts, to be silenced, but as chapters in the story of our becoming. You have spent a lifetime learning what matters. You've walked through storms and come out with clarity. You've paid in time, in energy, in love, in loss. And now someone is asking you to discard the very wisdom that came at such a high cost. No, this is not the season for reinvention. It's the season for embodiment. Let your laughter be loud, even if it's unladylike or too much. Let your music play, even if it's not trendy. Wear the colors that make your soul feel seen. Tell your stories again and again, because memory is not weakness. It is legacy. You are not here to fit into someone else's version of appropriate. You are here to be whole. And the irony is this: when you remain true to yourself, you give others permission to do the same. Your courage to be fully seen invites others to look inward instead of outward for answers. That is the medicine our world desperately needs. So the next time someone asks you to change, to mute, to shrink, to conform, look them in the eye, and without anger or apology, say, "I've earned the right to be myself, and I will not trade that for anyone's comfort." Because what makes you unique is not something to be corrected. It is something to be cherished. And the one person who must never ask you to betray yourself is you. As we come to the end of this journey, let us pause, not just to reflect, but to truly absorb what has been shared. Throughout your life, you've likely been told that love means sacrifice, that peace means compliance, that age means fading away. But what if those beliefs are not truths, but inherited illusions, unquestioned assumptions passed down from generations that feared individuation? Carl Jung taught us that the path to wholeness is not paved with approval from others, but with the courage to be fully oneself, even in the face of rejection. The woman or man who honors their truth, who sets boundaries, chooses peace over performance, and says no without guilt, has stepped into what Jung called the integration of the self. You are not here to be liked by everyone. You are here to become yourself. That means honoring your values when others call them outdated. It means holding fast to your joy even if others find it inconvenient. And it means rejecting any request that asks you to abandon your essence. There is no greater betrayal than self-abandonment, and no greater liberation than reclaiming your voice, your space, your time. In a world that constantly pulls us outward into obligations, opinions, projections, your true task is inward. To listen to the quiet voice that says, "I matter. My peace matters. My story matters." And here's the deeper truth. When you protect your inner world, you not only reclaim your energy, you model something powerful. You become a mirror that reflects what others have forgotten in themselves, the right to exist without apology. So if any part of this video stirred something in you, whether it was the reminder to stop carrying burdens that were never yours, or the validation that your choices are sacred, then take this as a sign to stop surviving for others and to start living for yourself. You don't need anyone's permission to choose peace. You don't need to justify your boundaries, your lifestyle, or your silence. Your life is the evidence, your years are the wisdom, and your joy is the revolution. Let's continue the conversation. Which part of today's message resonated most with you? Have you ever had to reclaim your peace by walking away or saying no? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I read everyone. Use the word clarity in your comment, so I know you stayed until the end, and I may give you a shout out in the next video. If this message gave you strength, insight, or peace, don't forget to subscribe and click the bell so you never miss another conversation like this one. This channel is your space for deep thinking, healing, and rediscovering who you truly are. Because here we don't just talk, we awaken. Thank you for being here. Until next time, stay true, stay whole,